Over here at LifeFood Long Island, coming to you live at 5. This voice comes from the furthest reaches of space, deep inside, presenting the incredible, the amazing Dr. David Jubb with the universe inside our mind. Dr. Jubb, it's so wonderful to be here with you. If you're listening, I'd love to welcome you to this program. Dr. Jubb.
Thanks so much, mate. It's so amazing to be with everyone today. We've been talking a bit about eye awareness, and we've been talking a bit about the Native American Toltec tradition, and we've been connecting the dots and connecting society together quite a bit, and common thread of consciousness that's being seeded in Machu Picchu and in the Himalayas and in lots of places in Africa, of course, and in America. But anyway, it is so amazing, you know, that in colloidal biology, how's the sound, by the way? Is the sound good?
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm glad. Because special significance sort of in our approach is to apply whole brain functioning principles, which are preferred patterns of being able to sort information that allow us to live more in the whole of ourselves, which we can talk a bit about. But then also we're applying Jubb cell rejuvenation and life food nutrition, and that it behooves people to really have a better understanding of what life food nutrition is. But in colloidal biology, which is a brand new insight into biology where the cell is not the original building block at all of our body, we have special significance that's placed on the vagal enteric nervous system. And this vagal enteric nervous system has a break on both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system and governs both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. And this is sort of like a brain-gut sort of a connection. And this vagal enteric nervous system is responsible for a whole range of conditions. And, of course, the sympathetic, which stimulates, and the parasympathetic, which relaxes, which is like a nerve response, really defines quite a diverse range of biological functioning in our body, including the management of acidosis and alkalosis, and involving an electrical sort of enzymatic feedback loop, Lukey. And as one part sort of changes, Lukey, it impacts all the other parts. In first, a sympathetic sort of, or a stimulated sort of response occurs, and then a relaxed consecutive sort of relay phase of a parasympathetic response occurs. And our body has a natural phase of healing itself, which it has a controlled fermentation of itself. Which may be interesting to people and new, but not in colloidal biology. But actually, our body involves the process of fermentation and controlledness, and the hypothalamus regulates the controlledness of fermentation that occurs in the body. But tissue that becomes acidic goes through a process of fermentation to assist to help clear away toxin and things. But in our world, where people are being given chemicals and poisons, a lot of those poisons are poisonous sulfamide and poisonous glycophosphate, sort of antibiotic and antiviral sort of chemicalizing and blocking both oxidation and fermentation. For instance, when you use tannins from trees, you can cure a skin, and you can tan that skin, which that's a shame, of course, because people shouldn't be tanning skins, and they shouldn't have tanned skins in their home either. Like, that's just the skin of a dead animal, which that's horrific, you know. But that's another matter. But anyway, these chemicals cure, and that's where the word cure comes from. It means to pickle, and the word cure is a very dirty, disgusting, filthy word, and people should really flee the scene if anybody's using the word cure, because it does come from chemicalizing, and it does mean that someone is probably referring to knowledge that's come down the pike from someone who has been involved in chemicalizing, which is the word cure. So the word cure is a dirty, disgusting, filthy word, and doesn't replace the word healing at all, you see. No. But anyway, these poisons, as we've been talking about, that's in bread, like the bromide and bleached flour that's in pizza, which is a very serious drug and a poisonous compound, and probably would be better for people to do cocaine, honest to God, than be just chowing down on pizza, thinking that is just a lovely food for children. But poisonous sulfides and antibiotics, when parents just rush children off to the doctor, a lot of these doctors will tell you that the vast majority of parents are really overreact and things and hyperreact, and many, many people are hypochondriacal and are perpetually looking for something in a bottle, you know, to manage something. But and then, of course, it's an extreme superstition that the native looks at Wasichu, or everybody who's a foreigner, you know, they call them Wasichu. And it's very strange to them to see Wasichu go to a cabinet to get something, because that's not medicine, because the word medicine in the native tradition really is the same word for intention. But biological consequences really not excellent, certainly, and as you sort of would have incurred, life colloidal endotoxins from die-off of all the chemicalizedness that those chemicals and everything sort of put into the body, and then of course there's no attention, of course, to the body ailments that's been continuously newly brought in, which is absolutely toxic, dead food, which includes banana and carrot juice, but that's another story. But as you really incur life colloid endotoxin as a result of poisonous administration of tannins and high concentrated juices without any fiber or vitamin U, the result really is to poison and administer dysbiotic or life colloid corpse die-off, and that sort of gets incorporated within and cloaked within body protein, and ends up as a mold, and very seriously hampers the body's ability to be able to cleanse itself properly, because it's sort of all those cleansing programs just drive the toxins in ever deeper. And that the connective tissue in your body has really little sort of humoral defense and then a lot of all of these neoplastic conditions and everything arise from connective tissue cells. But the connective tissue in your body really has very little humoral defense against all these tissue breaking down into mold, and doesn't really have a good cell-mediated immunity much at all, and relies a lot on the acid-alkaline balance being kept perfect and having proper weak organic acid and alkaline element and in bicarbonates released from the pancreas and the liver is sort of very important in this process. But that becomes impaired, which we'll just talk a little bit about. But the connective tissue is really composed of elastin and collagen, collagenic sort of fiber, and this in physiology is called mesenchymal sort of tissue. That mesenchymal tissue in physiology is very, very important because it really is a beauty for absorbing acid, and it has a very great acid absorption valence. And that's very helpful because in the inflammatory process, that creates a great inflammatory fitness, which over the consumption of dead food and carbonated beverages and fried sticky fingers and sandwiches and sliced cold flesh meats, deli sort of items and things, which is really, really cancerous. Those are the foods that children are being eating, and then it's often wrapped in plastic and things, so they're getting all these estrogens and stuff. And an active sort of sympathetic sort of dysbiotic phase really incurs, and adrenaline and thyroxine sort of domination occurs in the body, which can clearly be seen by anybody who has a background in physiology and blood analysis. And then you've got a domination of collagen sort of fiber expanding, and you've got all these sort of skin diseases, Lukey, and skin conditions and things. And then you've got interstitial mesenchymal sort of overacidness, and children sort of wet the bed and they can slobber and salivate and have colds and flu-like sort of symptoms and things, which apparently Dakota has sort of been suffered from, as a result of all the pig's flesh that he's been given, which I really, really cared very much for them not to do that at all, but they laughed in my face and told me that they would just give him ever more because, it's sort of pig farming where they kill pigs, where he's sort of being put. But anyway, but interstitial mesenchymal sort of overacidness really is dissolved as hyaluronidase ferments occur in the body, and the tissue breaks down into ferment, and red blood corpuscle that's compressed and stopped at the site of injury and things becomes these hyaluronidase ferments as life colloid double spores assemble into fermentive life colloids that produce this hyaluronidase substance, which then carbonic acid is released, which causes sort of like a burning sensation, and hydrochloric acid is released in the mucus, is produced, and including stomach cell mucus membrane, and you have really disordered mucus membrane in all these children. And then as this occurs, the bicarbonate of soda, which is become blocked because livers become occluded and bile occlusion occurs, and that bile occlusion typically is for the vast majority of children that are born to mothers that eat dead food. But then as this incurs, bicarbonate of soda really is other than really released like it should be. But then, if as the body is able to have its proper functioning, whenever that carbonic acid would have been present, as it is when people are eating a lot of this dead food, and they have the burning sensation and bloatedness of their body and stomach and heartburn and this sort of thing. But hydrochloric acid in the mucus really is produced, and including the stomach cell mucus membrane, and then as this incurs, bicarbonate of soda really is absorbed by the connective tissue also, which has a fitness to be able to be absorbed of such up to a certain point in things, and as you're able to produce the bicarbonates and neutralize the acidity. Otherwise, the acidity activates, sort of continues to activate a protein fermentive sort of life colloidal phase of your cells, and your cells break down into ferments, basically. But that is sort of creates a disintegration. Then and a secondary phase starts to occur, which is a fermentive alkaline secretion of the body as it gives up all of its potassium, and the blood becomes more and more alkaline, which that's a precancerous condition of a child, which is the leading cause of death for children and of course adults today. The fermentive alkaline secretion of body bicarbonate becomes further and further reduced, and then inflammation is not really being controlled properly, and inflammation starts to run a riot sort of thing in the skin, and itchiness and flakiness, and the older the people get, the more and more they itch and scratch, and their skin breaks down, and skin on the face of children and things can be shown that they have this condition, and pig's flesh, I want you to know, really doesn't help, and that's the reason why lots of religions really don't care for their children to ever be fed pig's flesh, and it would be such a serious violation that anybody would do that and then laugh in your face that they did it to your children. It's just extremely offensive, but that's what's happened to me. The people that are looking after Dakota just laughed in my face, and when I said that I am educating people about life food and things, and they said, that they knew far more about nutrition than me, but they've never studied a day of nutrition in their life, you know what I mean? And but they've been, by cloisteredness, having kidnapped Dakota up to this point. But anyway, but tissue lesions incur on the skin, which I have even seen on Dakota's face, and that incurs fatal sort of toxic sort of antigens, and if that's not neutralized and cleared away as it is should be in the body, an irritated cell membrane sort of really provokes leukocytotoxins, which when people eat, let's see, for instance, boiled or very heat-processed flesh, they end up with leukocytes in their blood, which is just like a cancer, but it clears up after 24 hours. But when you have cancer, it just doesn't clear up at all. But then irritated cell membrane provokes sort of leukocytosis and leukocytoxins, and leukocytes enter into the digestive tract, and then a white cataract mucus discharge is excreted from all the orifices and things, and people end up with sort of ear and toe jam, and dying cells off their feet slough off continuously and break down into bacteria, and children and people get ringworm and that. But leukocytosis and zytotoxins, including sort of histamine, leuky, provokes this sort of inflammation response of the body, and life colloid sort of building block of connective tissue turn to their own demise, in that fermentive terrain, and then they produce, in turn, hyaluronidase that dissolves the connective tissue. Are you with me, Lukey?
Yep.
And then that creates lesions of the skin and the body and the brain, and life colloid probiotics sort of like Jubb's life colloid probiotic, that holy dirt, really is very important in this respect because it can assist to help to turn around a lot of these conditions, which is really totally absent in most people's gut. But life colloid double spore building block make up all life, and those building blocks kind of pleomorph back into dysbiotic life colloid in the terrain, and that allowed an expression of that, and chemicalizing, and the word curing, which is really a dirty word, of course, is chemicalizing, and that it stops the natural process, you see, and then these synthetics and synthetic chemicals and drugs and even aspirin and things causes the natural process of toxins to be stored in the connective tissue, and then that causes a coagulatedness and congealedness and a gelatinizedness and a laminatedness of the toxin. And then the body's reaction really is to store that toxin and manage it all by sort of alkalizing the blood ever more, which that's actually what we could see in children's blood today, and of course certainly adults, which are well on their way to cancer. But alkalizing that incurs, and then a parasympathetic activity, which is like a loss of energy, lethargy, and fits of crying spells, and depression, and loss of actual brain function and cognitive processing that occurs to children, and then a loss of IQ and everything. And attention deficit disorders, and then a zombieization, and then you've got Project Monarch of the butterfly, and taking over of the brain, lobotomizing, and then getting a handler for the person, which is typically a social worker or somebody to make sure that a person remains chemicalized. And so that they could do that to boys, they really do it quickly, because that they could zombieize the boys. They're better soldiers, and the TV games that become excited to watch, and the games that the kids bring to school are extremely attractive, and then they're just interested in watching how to kill a bear or something, on TV. Or kill another man on TV. But a drug as a poison, really chemicalized, really is being put on the table of people, and then also in packeted foods and things. And those packeted foods, which really have all these drugs and poisons to cause it to have a long shelf life and be not able to be even broken down at all, puts a sediment like a cement into the body nicely, and that causes death eventually. But suppressed symptoms of the disease is what modern medicine is about, and as they can do what they can to suppress the symptom of the disease, they drive it further deeper and create ever more quicker death overall. But if you could have a little bit of relief because you won't have a headache, but then it causes bleeding from your rectum, which is apparently acceptable in moderation or something, just for the moment you relieve a headache, this sort of thinking is very problematic. But regressive vicaration really becomes then reactive, as a new disease, Lukey, you see. And celiac disease that we've been talking about, and bile occlusion, really just sort of is a masked by another disease down the pike. which is exciting and very sexy for people to treat. And then, it just keeps them coming to you over and over again. People are just taking money from the unsuspected person. But then the excretion sort of has a reactive deposition, sort of impregnation and degeneration, and then that really leads to neoplastic condition and ulcerative conditions of the skin, cirrhotic, psoriasis, sebaceous glands ending up as pimples, and then just a rotting and degeneration from inside, halitosis, and just foul smelling stools and stinking feet. Yeah. But anyway, over 1,000 sort of life colloids sort of have been studied, and they do have a beautiful probiotic sort of effect, and that is absolutely what's missing, in people's diets. And if they're just given pig's flesh, but then they're not given anything else to help manage things, that could guarantee a quicker, shorter life. And that's the reason why a lot of religions really forbid people to ever eat any pig's flesh at all, you see. But why is it that religions are really very seriously concerned if anybody ever fed their child pig's flesh? But an enormous array of vital disease fighting element would ordinarily be present, but if it's just taken up by the poisonous compounds that's released by consuming the flesh of a dead pig, that really doesn't help at all, But pig's flesh consumption does provoke very, very serious symptoms of disease, Lukey, including very alarmingly large cholesterol radical molecule in the blood and large pools of such. And it does change the low-density lipoprotein to be dangerous and reduces high-density lipoprotein. And that does set the stage for diabetes, heart disease, and obesity. And that Dakota really, at the age of 7, in the few years that he's been fed by these people, he's really become obese. And then, of course, everyone in the family there is extremely obese, you see. And then the pig's flesh consumption, and that I wonder if there is a pig farmer out there that's not fat. They should really do what they can to connect with us, perhaps, or is not pot-bellied in older age and spindled and flaky skin and and that sort of thing. But pig's flesh consumption certainly does dampen the IQ, and then people can't even get their way out of a wet paper bag, But that's another story. But anyway, pig's flesh consumption, really is what I've sort of really done what I can to cause people to avoid certainly all the soggy cardboard foods which bloat and cause hair loss, does provoke very serious symptoms of disease, including alarmingly large cholesterol molecules in the blood, extremely high cholesterol that is present in all neoplastic conditions and pre-neoplastic conditions, and then milk consumption with its insulin growth factors is just sort of a nice like catalyst. It's just sort of like putting a bit of petrol on the fire, and it can explode a neoplastic condition, and then a lot of these children end up in hospital dying of pneumonia or and this sort of thing, coughing and phlegmy and congested lungs, and then they're not able to poop, and they're not able to let things go, and then their shoulders are not relaxed in life, and then their spit does show that they have very high adrenaline and cortisol levels, and then the threat of having to go to school and all sorts of things is just, it just assists to help to cause ever more death, actually. But histamine excess and histidalic and histopenic sorts of conditions are the primary sorts of conditions that are affecting children. But pneumatic sort of like symptoms promote the growth of growth hormone, and then, of course, milk consumption and pizza, which is given sort of the children become addicted to, and then these schizophrenic and, Asperger-like symptoms and autistic-like sort of symptoms really is also stimulated by a bovine growth hormone that's in the milk and things. And that really could be seen to be part of an eugenics program, promoting, and then, of course, flesh consumption does stimulate insulin growth factors. And then if you put a little bit of, colostrum with that and deer antler, it's quickly on the way to prostate cancer if you're a male, or breast cancer, for females. But promoted growth hormone not being able to be reduced of that by continuing on with your dead food consumption, and banana eating and bicycle riding will not help. And if by the age of 40 or 50, these speakers, whenever I've seen them, they look gaunt, honest to God, and fuzzy. And whenever I've seen them, they kind of weren't able to focus on me, and that was a bit of a problem, I thought. It was as if all of a sudden there was a serious dissociatedness evermore. And a lot of these people, Lukey, when I connected with them, I saw their legs, mate, and honest to God, the legs of these people, just all of a sudden they were like jelly. And they were not able to really hold any strength, mate. It was pretty amazing. But anyway, these priests and the politicians and certainly all the judges in the family courts that are taking the children, about the most jelly-legged people I've ever met in my life, that looked like they were just about to be bowled over with their own thinking, you know what I mean? But anyway, that's another story. Look, this sulfur-containing mucus matter really does form a lot in all of this dysbiotic spore-like condition that arises from eating all this toxic dead food, soggy cardboard, super phosphate, super this, super that, tannin-rich dead food, which is not live food. But dysbiotic life colloid in the blood absolutely is present. Are you there, Lukey?
Yep. Is it possible that I'm horrified and empowered at the same time?
Well, we should be relaxed because, you got the answer, mate. Live food, you're underway. But neoplastic cancerous conditions and warts and growths and discharge from the orifices, white cataract mucousy discharges are serious conditions, and consuming pig's flesh and then just chowing down on bagels, cream cheese and lox, it's just not going to help, mate. People should really be on all the gorgeous food that they do just when they cleanse permanently. But neoplastic developmental stages of dysbiotic life colloid cycle is absolutely present, Lukey, in most people's blood, mate, honest to God. You're eating trash, you're eating crap, that's not moving through your body. You've just become the sewer and possibly the graveyard for dead animals. You know what I mean? You've got bile occlusion, certainly, because most people are born that way. And then certainly Asian people and then South American people, they very seriously are born jaundiced. And bile occlusion, it doesn't clear up. And then most of these people have talked about they end up in the age of in their 30s, and the men and the women look a lot like each other, and their dimorphism is gone. But excessive calcium phosphate deposit is really rife, and nobody's doing anything about it. It's such a laughing matter. It's funny, you know. They wander on into these clinics to get help and stuff, and they walk out with all the calcium phosphate just all in their body, just cemented, and nobody's actually giving them any clue. So it's quite funny, but it's sad, actually. But excessive high levels of calcium phosphate, Lukey, deposit is incurred in the brain, in the connective tissue of the body, causing the body and the brain and the connective tissue to really initially bloat and swell, and then you've got eyesight problems. These people are blind as bats, mate. They can't see in front of them. They lack the ability to use the visual processing, so they can't. You have to see what I mean to get a clear perspective. And a lot of these people are stuck in their feelings, feeling, going, getting, having, and doing, and then just having a little bit of auditory sound, words to admit, to explain. But they don't ever exit into vision much at all, and then they become drongos, and then the children underneath them also become drongos, and that's a very deep fear that I've had as a parent, that Dakota's eyesight is going to be going like the rest of the people that actually are looking after him. And then none of them have good eyesight, Mark. They've all four-eyed. They've got to actually wear thick glasses and stuff, you know. And they become very thick-setted and belligerent, and they lose their eyesight, and they lose their hearing, and they stop sort of listening, sort of thing, you know. It's a shame. But then edema continues on, and then the slow process of the slow, painful death of their ancestors sets in, and slow loss of dehydration of water from the cells of the body, baldness and wrinkledness of the skin and things, and slow witheredness away. But that's really, really occurring to children. And a lot of people that I see in their 20s and 30s, they're fat, they've got subcutaneous layer of fat under their skin, and they just become bloated, like kegs, like beer kegs on tiny little spindles, of spindles of legs, and saggy butted. But dehydration continues, and the excitotoxicity of nerve cells is rampant, and then all of the baby food and the packet food and things that got all these excitotoxins in it creates a lot of salivation, and you can't stop with just one packet. And once you've fed the child a packet of that, they perpetually want that. I'm afraid that's the sort of thing that's going on for Dakota. Do you know what I mean? And the witches and the judges and the people in New York, especially Susan Knips and people like her, which you could read about her, are committing the most heinous crimes, just like Mendel did, you know. And Joan Tenenbaum that's working for ACS, committed the most heinous fraud, and they didn't care that they absolutely did what they could to kill Dakota. He just about lost a lot of his weight when they took him from crying, you know, and they vaccinated him and everything, and they just laugh in your face, you know what I mean? There is no oversight, mate, none at all. It's just like Nazi Germany, just allowed to just run rampant over New York City and take your children and just feed your kids from an idiot box, you know, and keep them just stuck in front of an electronic device perpetually, and you can tell because they get too head forward, and little by little they hallucinate, and hypercapnia sets in, and sleep apnea, and then around about 3 o'clock in the morning, acidosis, and between 3 and 10 in the morning on Monday morning, most people die. in the Western world. But that's another story, isn't it? But pig's flesh consumption really does provoke the serious symptoms of that disease, and it is a reason why a lot of religions and spiritual people absolutely do not allow their people to eat the flesh of a pig. And that's why when somebody would just say they fed your kid pig's flesh after you've really been educating people not to, and then just laugh in your face and hang up, and ever since then never talk to you, you know what I mean? And just continue to feed your kid pig's flesh. But alarmingly large cholesterol, histamine excess, excessive high levels of calcium phosphate, life colloid probiotics, of course, has its naturally occurring quinines and contains quenching sort of carbanols that are beautiful and that create and stimulate peroxide to be released by the reaction of these life colloids in the intestine, and that blocks sulfur ferments and stimulates other anti-toxic effects, Lukey. But in the ultradian cycle that occurs around 2 a.m. in the morning, where the liver would ordinarily be releasing glycogen stores into the blood to replenish cells' respiration requirement, and at around about 3 a.m., acid milieu kind of developed, and damp, wet, cold acid terrain begins and causes body injury to the cell matrix and causes that matrix to ferment and break down into dysbiotic life colloid inside the cell, and that grows in colonies to become a fungus and then culminates in mycelial thread through the cell, and then and these are the sorts of things that's going on in people's feet, in their skin, in their intestinal tract, and then mouth breathing goes on in their life. They become congested. They become sort of very, very nasal sorts of talkers and mucousy, and that induces hypocapnia and sleep apnea, and a major nervous system crisis takes place, and at least 24 hours it takes to correct, which just often generally doesn't ever get corrected, Lukey, you see. But quasar light, from a quasar burst of a star as it goes quasar, it's faster than 300,000 kilometers per second, and that the universe really exists inside a universe and inside ourselves, and even inside a corpuscle, and a universe of degrees of luminosity, where our cosmos could easily be similar to an erythrocyte or a red blood corpuscle, and only be more sort of egg-shaped rather than sort of in its disc-like shape. But coenzyme A and coenzyme Q is really being produced as an intermediary factor in energy production and electron transfer, and these sorts of nutrients are being produced in the intestine when you have proper probiotics. And that really does abound beautifully in Jubb's probiotic life colloid. Otherwise, sort of metabolism really kind of become impaired, Lucy. You know what I mean? Dead food consumption and the consumption of pig's flesh and everything cooked and starchy, and then sugary, sweet, pasteurized juice from the fridge, carbonated beverage, and food out of a packet, and then a closed-up house with carpet and estrogens, and chemicals used to cure and clean and antiseptic the house. You've just got the conditions really of AIDS. And AIDS really is a chemicalizing of the body and a driving further in endotoxin, you see, and that's all AIDS is. It's a chemicalizing of the body. But dead food consumption blocks the body's ability to be able to produce glycogen, and that glycogen is very, very important, Lukey, to keep the acid coat of the skin intact, And so then people start to suffer with all sorts of skin conditions and things, and itching of the skin and flaking of the skin, and psoriasis and cirrhotic sorts of skin conditions, and sebaceous, pimple-like skin, and hair loss. And in all diseases, the men start to get bald, and even the women start to become